The sound of splintering glass cut through the October night like a scream. I jerked awake in my recliner, the remote control clattering to the floor as my 15-year-old son Will shook my shoulder. "Dad, wake up! Someone's outside!" Through the front window of our colonial house, I could see two figures in the driveway. Even in the dim porch light, I recognized my ex-wife Erin's silhouette immediately. The man beside her had to be Trevor Hartley, her new husband of exactly 3 months. They were arguing, their voices carrying across the October air. "I'm Jack Larkin, 42 years old, and I install security systems for a living. Before that, I spent 12 years as a paratrooper. You'd think those credentials would earn me some respect, but apparently not from the woman who took half my savings and moved in with the richest guy in Millbrook, Maine." "Stay back, Will," I said, moving toward the window. That's when Trevor picked up a landscaping stone from our flower bed and hurled it straight at the glass. The window exploded inward, sending shards across our living room. I tackled Will to the side, both of us hitting the hardwood floor as glass rained down. A piece caught my forearm, leaving a thin red line. "What the heck was that about?" Will whispered, his voice shaking. Through the broken window, I heard Erin's voice. "There! Now he knows we're serious." Trevor laughed, a sound like nails on a chalkboard. "Guy's probably too scared to even call the cops." They climbed back into Trevor's BMW and roared off into the night, leaving us with a destroyed window and a living room full of glass. I helped Will to his feet, checking him for cuts. He was fine, just rattled. "Dad, why would Mom do that?" Good question. Our divorce had been finalized 8 months ago. Erin got the house in the expensive part of town. I kept this place, and we shared custody of Will. Things had been civil, or so I thought, but apparently, marrying Trevor had changed her perspective on our arrangement. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. As I swept up the glass, something caught my eye near the broken window. A small black phone, the cheap kind you buy at gas stations. It must have fallen from Erin's purse during their dramatic exit. I powered it on. No password protection. These two weren't exactly criminal masterminds. The text messages made my stomach turn. Not because of their affair. I'd suspected that long before our divorce. No, what made me angry were the plans they'd been making. Plans involving me, Will, and this house. "Jack's too stupid to fight back," read one message from Erin to Trevor. "We can pressure him into selling the house cheap. Will would rather live with us anyway." Trevor's response, "Perfect. I've got connections at the bank. We can make his life very difficult." There were photos, too. Pictures of our house, our yard, even shots taken through our windows. They'd been watching us, planning something. I scrolled through weeks of messages. They wanted to force me out of Millbrook entirely. Trevor had business contacts who could make sure I never got security contracts in the area again. Erin planned to tell people I was unstable, maybe even dangerous around Will. The final message was from earlier that evening. "Tonight we send the message. Tomorrow we start the real pressure." I set the phone down and looked around our living room. 20 years I'd lived in this house. Will had taken his first steps right here on this floor. Erin and I had painted these walls together back when we were happy, or at least pretending to be. They thought I was too stupid to fight back. They thought I'd roll over and let them take everything, including my son's respect. They were wrong. I'd learned a few things during my military service. Patience, planning, and most importantly, never underestimate your enemy's capacity for stupidity. Erin and Trevor had just handed me their entire playbook on a silver platter. "Dad?" Will was standing in the doorway holding a dustpan. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, son. Better than fine, actually." I slipped the phone into my pocket. "How would you feel about helping your old man with a little project?" What kind of project? I smiled, feeling more energetic than I had in months. The kind that teaches people not to throw stones at glass houses. The next morning, I drove Will to school in my pickup truck, taking the long way past Trevor's McMansion on Elm Street. The house was a monument to new money, all angles and glass, sitting on 5 acres like a spaceship that had landed in rural Maine. 2 BMWs in the circular driveway, a 3-car garage, and enough security lights to illuminate a football stadium. That place is ugly, Will said, following my gaze. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, son, but you're not wrong. After dropping Will off at Millbrook High, I headed to Pete's auto shop on the other side of town. Pete Morrison had been my sergeant back in the 82nd Airborne, and now he ran the best garage in 3 counties. More importantly, he knew everyone's business and had no love for people like Trevor Hartley. I found Pete under the hood of a Ford Explorer, his gray hair sticking out from under a Red Sox cap. He looked up when I walked in, wiping his hands on a rag. "Jack, heard you had some excitement last night. Mrs. Havers was at the diner this morning, telling everyone about the commotion at your place." Mrs. Havers lived next door to me and had the supernatural ability to witness everything interesting that happened in a 5-mile radius. In most places, having a nosy neighbor would be annoying. In Millbrook, she was better than a newspaper. "Trevor Hartley threw a rock through my window," I said, "but he left me a present in return." I showed Pete the burner phone and some of the messages. His expression darkened as he read. "These people are planning to destroy you," he said. "What are you going to do about it?" "I'm going to return the favor, but I need some information first." Pete grinned. "What kind of information?" "The kind that comes from having half the town's cars pass through your shop. What do you know about Trevor's business dealings?" Pete set down his wrench and leaned against the workbench. "Trevor Hartley thinks he's a big shot because he inherited his daddy's construction company and married into some money from his first wife. But word is, he's overextended. Got 3 major projects going and not enough capital to finish them properly." "Interesting. What else?" "His business partner is a guy named Lyle Brennan. Real piece of work. They've been cutting corners on the new shopping center project, using cheap materials, paying workers under the table. Nothing illegal enough to shut them down, but plenty that would embarrass them if it got out." This was exactly what I needed to hear. "And Erin? Your ex-wife's been bragging all over town about her new lifestyle. Expensive clothes, fancy dinners, talking about how she upgraded from her previous situation." Pete's voice carried a note of disgust. "Most folks around here don't appreciate that kind of talk." I spent another hour with Pete, gathering details about Trevor's business, his habits, and his weaknesses. By the time I left, I had the beginnings of a plan. My next stop was the hardware store, where I picked up some supplies for my security business. Motion sensors, small cameras, recording equipment. All perfectly legal items that any security professional might need. That afternoon, I installed a comprehensive surveillance system around my own house, not just for protection, but for documentation. If Erin and Trevor wanted to escalate things, I'd have evidence of everything they did. While I worked, Mrs. Havers appeared at her kitchen window, watching with obvious curiosity. I waved to her and walked over to the fence that separated our properties. "Afternoon, Mrs. Havers. Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Oh, hello, Jack. I'm so sorry about your window. I saw the whole thing, you know. Just terrible behavior." Mrs. Havers was 73 years old and had lived in Millbrook her entire life. She knew everyone, remembered everything, and had strong opinions about proper behavior. "I don't suppose you happened to get a good look at what happened?" "Indeed I did. I was having trouble sleeping, so I was reading by my window when I heard voices. That Trevor Hartley was shouting something about teaching you a lesson. Then he picked up that stone and threw it right through your beautiful window. Erin was laughing about it. That must have been upsetting to witness." "Upsetting? Jack, I was horrified. In all my years, I've never seen such behavior from supposedly respectable people. And with poor Will in the house, too. I could see the genuine anger in her eyes. Mrs. Havers had always been fond of Will, and the idea that someone had endangered him clearly outraged her. "Well, I'm sure it'll all work out," I said. "These things usually do." "I certainly hope so. And Jack, if you need someone to tell people what really happened last night, you just let me know. I believe in speaking the truth." "Perfect." Mrs. Havers didn't know it yet, but she'd just volunteered to be my information warfare specialist. That evening, Will and I ordered pizza and ate it in the kitchen while I explained my plan. Not the whole plan. He was 15, and there were some things he didn't need to know, but enough to help him understand what was happening. "Mom really sent those messages?" he asked, looking at the phone. "I'm afraid so, son." "And they want to make us move away?" "That seems to be the idea." Will was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, he looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Determination mixed with disappointment. "What can I do to help?" "Just keep being yourself, and if your mother or Trevor try to turn you against me, remember that actions speak louder than words." "I'm not going anywhere, Dad. This is our home." That night, after Will went to bed, I sat in my workshop in the basement, planning my next moves. The burner phone sat on my workbench like a gift from heaven. Every message, every photo, every detail of their plan was right there in digital black and white. They wanted to play games with my life? Fine. But they'd picked the wrong opponent. I'd spent 12 years in the military learning how to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast people who were trying to hurt me and my team. Erin and Trevor were about to get a masterclass in strategic warfare. 3 days after the window incident, I put my plan into motion. The first target was Erin's carefully constructed social media presence. My ex-wife had always been image-obsessed, but marriage to Trevor had turned her into a full-time lifestyle influencer. Her Instagram account, Millbrook Luxury Living, showcased her new life with professionally staged photos of expensive dinners, designer clothes, and the McMansion's interior. What most people didn't know was that Erin used this account to attract high-end real estate clients. She'd built her entire business around the image of success and sophistication. Her bio read, "Millbrook's premier luxury real estate specialist, living the dream and helping you find yours." Using the evidence from the burner phone, I created a simple slideshow. Screenshots of her messages about manipulating me, photos she'd taken while spying on our house, and her comments about Will preferring to live with them. Nothing doctored, nothing taken out of context. Just her own words. I uploaded the slideshow to a new anonymous account and tagged it to her business page with a simple caption. "The real Erin Hartley. See what she says when she thinks nobody's watching." Within hours, the post had been shared dozens of times. By evening, it had reached most of Millbrook's social media users. The comments were brutal. "This is disgusting behavior. How can she treat her own son like this? I was thinking of using her as my realtor. Not anymore. Someone should report her to the real estate board." Erin tried to delete the tags and block the anonymous account, but the damage was done. Screenshots had been saved and shared independently. Mrs. Havers, who had recently joined Facebook, shared the post with her church group and book club. The next morning, I was installing a security system at the Millbrook Community Center when my phone buzzed with an angry text from Erin. "I know this was you. Take it down now or you'll regret it." I replied, "Take what down? I have no idea what you're talking about." 20 minutes later, Trevor himself showed up at the community center. He climbed out of his BMW wearing a $1,000 suit and the kind of fake tan that screams, "I think I'm better than everyone else." "Jack, we need to talk." I continued working on the security panel, not bothering to look up. "I'm busy, Trevor. Make an appointment." "Don't play games with me. You know what you did." Now I looked at him. Trevor was shorter than me, softer, with the kind of manicured appearance that suggested he'd never done a day of manual labor in his life. His face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. I installed security systems, Trevor. That's what I do. What do you do again? Besides throw rocks through windows? You posted those messages online. Erin's business is being destroyed. That's terrible. Have you considered that maybe the problem isn't who shared the messages but what the messages said? Trevor stepped closer, trying to intimidate me. You think you're clever? You think this is over? I have connections in this town. I can make your life very difficult. I stood up slowly, letting him see the full difference in our sizes. Trevor, let me explain something to you. I spent 12 years jumping out of airplanes with a rifle, protecting people from actual threats. You inherited a construction company and married into money. We are not the same. His face went pale, but he tried to maintain his bluster. This isn't over, Jack. You're right, it's not. After Trevor left, I called Pete to update him on the morning's events. He was laughing so hard I could barely understand him. You should see the talk at the diner, Pete said. Half the town's seen those messages. Erin's lost 3 clients just this morning, and Trevor's getting some interesting looks, too. What kind of looks? The kind you get when people realize you're not as successful as you pretend to be. Turns out, when your new wife's real estate business starts failing, people start asking questions about your own finances. This was better than I'd hoped. In a small town like Millbrook, reputation was everything. Erin and Trevor had built their social status on an image of success and superiority. That image was cracking. That afternoon, I picked up Will from school and took him to get ice cream at Murphy's Dairy Bar, a local institution that had been serving the same vanilla and chocolate soft serve for 30 years. We sat at one of the picnic tables outside, watching the October leaves fall. Dad, some kids at school were talking about Mom today, Will said carefully. What kind of talking? They saw those messages online. They were asking me if it was true that she wanted to make us move away. I studied my son's face. He looked confused and hurt, but not angry. Not yet. What did you tell them? I said I didn't know anything about it, but Dad, is it true? Does she really think those things about you? This was the conversation I'd been dreading. How do you explain to a 15-year-old that his mother had chosen her new lifestyle over his stability? Will, your mother is going through some changes right now. Sometimes when people get caught up in trying to impress others, they lose sight of what's really important. But she wrote those things about you, about us. Yes, she did. That's not right. No, son, it's not. We finished our ice cream in silence, both of us processing the new reality of our situation. Finally, Will looked up at me with a determined expression. I'm not moving, Dad. I don't care what she says. This is my home, and you're my family. I'm glad to hear that, Will, because I'm not going anywhere either. That evening, after Will went to bed, I sat in my workshop planning phase 2 of my campaign. Erin's business was damaged, but Trevor was still feeling confident. That needed to change. I pulled up the photos from the burner phone, the ones they'd taken while surveilling my house. Using my security software, I enhanced the images to show the metadata, dates, times, and GPS coordinates proving they'd been stalking us. Then I created a simple flyer, Neighborhood Watch Alert, Suspicious Activity Reported. I included the enhanced photos and a description of the surveillance behavior, along with license plate numbers for both of Trevor's cars. I printed 50 copies and distributed them to mailboxes throughout Trevor's neighborhood. Nothing illegal, nothing threatening. Just concerned citizens sharing information about suspicious activity. By morning, Trevor's neighbors would know that their prestigious new resident was the type of person who spied on his ex-wife's family. In a neighborhood where people paid premium prices for privacy and security, that was not the kind of reputation you wanted. Phase 1 had damaged Erin's business. Phase 2 would damage Trevor's social standing. But I was just getting started. They'd wanted to play psychological warfare with my family. Now they were about to learn what that actually looked like when practiced by someone who knew what they were doing. The next morning, brought the first signs that my psychological campaign was working. Trevor's BMW sat in my driveway at 7 a.m., engine running, music blasting loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. He was trying to harass me, but all he was really doing was proving my point about his character. I walked out to my truck, coffee in hand, and waved cheerfully to Mrs. Havers, who was watching from her window. She waved back and held up her phone, clearly recording Trevor's behavior. Trevor rolled down his window as I approached. "Having fun, Jack?" "Actually, yes. Beautiful morning, isn't it? You think you're so smart with your little flyers and your online games, but you're messing with the wrong people." "I'm not messing with anyone, Trevor. I'm just living my life. You're the one sitting in my driveway at 7 in the morning playing loud music. This stops now, or things get serious." I leaned closer to his window. "Trevor, let me ask you something. Do you think this behavior makes you look powerful or desperate?" His face flushed red. "You'll find out soon enough." After Trevor left, Mrs. Havers appeared at our shared fence with a plate of homemade muffins and a concerned expression. "Jack, that man is becoming quite the nuisance. I've been keeping track of his visits. This is the 4th time this week he's been here causing trouble." "I appreciate you paying attention, Mrs. Havers." "Oh, it's no trouble at all. In fact, I've been sharing my observations with the ladies at church. We're all quite concerned about this pattern of harassment." Mrs. Havers's church group included the wives of the police chief, the mayor, and half the town council. If they were talking about Trevor's behavior, word would spread quickly through Millbrook's power structure. "I'm sure it will all work out," I said, accepting the muffins gratefully. "I'm sure it will too, dear. Men like that usually create their own downfall." That afternoon, I was working on a security installation at the high school when Will's football coach approached me. Coach Martinez had been running the Millbrook Eagles for 15 years and commanded respect throughout the community. "Jack, can I have a word?" We walked away from the other parents and players. Coach Martinez looked uncomfortable, like he was about to deliver bad news. "I got a call from Erin this morning. She wants Will to quit the team." "What? Why?" "She says the practices are too late, interfering with family time. She wants him home by 4 p.m. every day." This was obviously part of their campaign to isolate Will from activities he enjoyed and people who supported him. Football practice ran until 6 p.m., and Will loved being on the team. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that Will's transportation and activities were your decision on your custody days. But Jack, she seemed pretty determined. She mentioned getting lawyers involved." "Let her get lawyers. Will loves football, and I'm not letting her take that away from him." Coach Martinez nodded approvingly. "Good. The boy's got real potential, and the team needs him. But I wanted to give you a heads up about what's coming." That evening, I sat Will down for another serious conversation. He took the news about football better than I'd expected. "She's trying to control everything, isn't she?" he said. "It looks that way." "Dad, I've been thinking about something. What if I told the court I wanted to live with you full time?" The question caught me off guard. "Will, that's a big decision. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Mom's changed, and not in a good way. She cares more about impressing Trevor and his friends than about what I want. And after seeing those messages..." "What about those messages?" "She called you stupid, Dad. But you're not stupid. You're the smartest person I know, and she was planning to lie about you to make us move away. I can't respect someone who would do that." That night, after Will went to bed, I called my lawyer to discuss custody modification options. The conversation was encouraging. With the evidence from the burner phone and documentation of their harassment, we had a strong case. But legal proceedings would take months, and I suspected Erin and Trevor wouldn't wait that long to escalate their campaign. I needed to stay ahead of them. The next phase of my plan targeted Trevor's business reputation. Using public records and information Pete had gathered from his network, I compiled a detailed report on the corner-cutting and questionable practices at Trevor's construction sites. I didn't fabricate anything or break any laws. I simply organized publicly available information into a comprehensive document showing patterns of code violations, worker complaints, and safety issues. Then, I mailed copies to the building inspectors, insurance companies, and potential clients for Trevor's 3 major projects. Within a week, 2 of Trevor's projects were hit with surprise inspections. The inspectors found exactly what my report had suggested they'd find: substandard materials, unpermitted work, and safety violations. The local newspaper ran a story about construction oversight and mentioned Trevor's company specifically. The article was factual and balanced, but it raised questions about quality control and business practices. Trevor's response was predictable. He showed up at my house on Saturday morning with Lyle Brennan, his business partner. Lyle was a thick-set man with the kind of permanent scowl that suggested he'd never met a problem he couldn't solve with intimidation. I was in my driveway, washing my truck, when they pulled up. Will was inside doing homework, and Mrs. Havers was working in her garden within earshot of any conversation. "Jack, we need to talk," Trevor said, climbing out of his BMW. "I'm busy, Trevor, and I thought I told you to make an appointment." Lyle stepped forward, trying to loom over me. "Listen, pal, you're causing problems for our business. That stops now." I continued washing my truck, not bothering to look impressed by his tough guy act. "I install security systems, Lyle. I don't know anything about your business problems." "Don't play dumb," Trevor said. "Those reports didn't write themselves." "What reports?" "The ones you sent to the building inspectors. The ones that got our projects shut down for inspections." I straightened up and looked at them both. "Trevor, are you telling me that someone sent building inspectors information about code violations at your construction sites?" "You know exactly what I'm telling you. And you think I did this?" "I know you did this." I set down my sponge and faced them directly. "Trevor, let me ask you something. If someone sent inspectors to look at your work, and the inspectors found violations, isn't the real problem that the violations existed in the first place?" Lyle stepped closer, invading my personal space. "You think you're funny? You think this is a game?" "I think you're standing in my driveway trying to intimidate me because your business practices can't stand up to scrutiny." "Maybe it's time someone taught you some respect," Lyle said. That's when Mrs. Havers appeared at the fence, pruning shears in hand and a concerned expression on her face. "Jack, is everything all right?" These gentlemen seem quite agitated. "Everything's fine, Mrs. Havers. These are just some business associates of my ex-wife's husband. They were just leaving." Trevor looked at Mrs. Havers, then at me, clearly calculating whether he wanted to continue this confrontation in front of a witness. "This isn't over, Jack." "You keep saying that, Trevor. But maybe it should be." After they left, Mrs. Havers lingered by the fence. "Those men seemed quite threatening, Jack. They're frustrated about some business problems, nothing I can help them with." "I see. Well, if they continue to bother you, I hope you'll let the appropriate authorities know. We can't have people making threats in our neighborhood." "I'll keep that in mind, Mrs. Havers. Thank you for your concern." That evening, I updated my documentation with notes about the confrontation and Mrs. Havers' witness statement. The pattern of harassment was becoming clear, and I had multiple witnesses to their escalating behavior. But I also knew that Trevor and Lyle were getting desperate. Desperate people make poor decisions, and poor decisions create opportunities. I just had to be patient and wait for them to make their next mistake. The mistake came sooner than I expected. On Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Will's school. He'd never shown up for his last 2 classes, and the office couldn't reach Erin. My stomach dropped. It was my custody day, which meant I was responsible for picking Will up from school. But Will was 15 and responsible. He wouldn't just skip classes without a reason. I called his cell phone. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your son is safe. Stop interfering with our lives and he stays that way." Every instinct from my military training kicked in at once. This wasn't harassment anymore. This was kidnapping. I called the police first, then drove straight to the school to confirm Will was missing. The principal, Mrs. Chen, was clearly shaken by the situation. "He was in third period English," she said, "but when fourth period started, his teacher marked him absent. We checked with the office. No one signed him out." "Did anyone see him leave?" "The security cameras show him walking toward the parking lot during lunch break. There's a man with him, but we can't see his face clearly." She pulled up the footage on her computer, and I studied it carefully. The figure was definitely adult-sized, and from the way Will was walking, it seemed like he was going willingly. That could only mean one thing. This was someone he knew, someone he trusted. The pit in my stomach deepened. This wasn't a random abduction. Whoever had taken him, it was someone in his life, someone close. Just then, my phone buzzed. I looked at the caller ID, Pete. "Jack, you need to get down to the VFW. Now." "Pete, I can't. Will's missing and—" "That's why you need to get down here. Trevor Hartley's been drinking and bragging about teaching you a lesson. He's got Will." My heart skipped a beat, and the urgency in Pete's voice hit me like a punch. Trevor Hartley. My stomach churned. This was exactly what I had feared. Trevor had always been a problem, but now it seemed he was taking it to another level. I didn't think twice. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and ran out of the office. The VFW hall was only a 10-minute drive from the school. I made it in 6, swerving around corners and running 2 red lights. The tires screeched in protest, but I didn't care. Every second counted. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw Pete standing with 3 other veterans. Their faces were grim, eyes hard with something darker than just concern. I could tell by their posture that they were ready for a fight. "He's inside," Pete said, his voice low. "Drunk off his rear end, telling everyone who will listen how he's finally got you where he wants you." "Is Will with him?" My voice came out rough, filled with more fear than I cared to admit. "No, but he keeps talking about the boy being somewhere safe," Pete answered, his jaw tightening with anger. I took a step toward the entrance, but Pete grabbed my arm, stopping me. "Jack, there's a dozen people in there. You go in swinging, and it becomes a public mess. Think tactical." He was right. Charging in like a bull would only make things worse. I needed information first. Action could come later, but I had to make sure I wasn't walking into a trap. "What exactly did he say?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the rising panic. "That he picked Will up from school for a family meeting. That you'd stop causing problems once you realized he could get to your son anytime he wanted. And that Will was learning some respect at his house." His house. That hit me like a ton of bricks. The McMansion on Elm Street. I knew exactly where that was. The massive house with the circular driveway, the 3-car garage, the pristine lawns. The kind of place where Trevor liked to flaunt his wealth, and where I knew he had too much control. If Will was there, it would be the perfect place for Trevor to hide him, to assert power. I felt my fists clench, but I kept my emotions in check. I couldn't let Trevor see my desperation. I had to be smart. I turned to Pete. "I need you to stay here and keep an eye on things. If anything goes sideways, I need backup." "Got it, but be careful, Jack. This guy's a snake. Don't do anything stupid." I nodded, swallowing down the lump in my throat. "I'll be smart." I called the police again, giving them Trevor's location at the VFW and what he had been saying about Will. They promised to send a patrol car to the McMansion, but they couldn't act without a warrant. My heart raced as I hung up. The system was too slow. I couldn't afford to wait for them to catch up. I drove to Elm Street, parking 3 blocks away from Trevor's house. I wanted to stay out of sight, minimize the chances of anyone spotting me. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, but I forced myself to stay calm. The last thing I needed was to give Trevor an advantage. I got out of the car, locking it behind me, and moved quickly but quietly toward Trevor's house. The streets were eerily silent, the evening air cool against my skin. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I couldn't let fear stop me. Will needed me now more than ever. I crouched low as I approached the house, staying in the shadows as I moved down the street. Trevor had never been a man to hide his actions, but tonight, I couldn't afford to make any noise. The large house loomed ahead, its lights casting a warm glow on the manicured lawn, but I was focused on the task at hand. I had to get Will out of there, and I had to do it without alerting Trevor that his game was over. The McMansion sat on 5 acres, mostly open lawn with a few ornamental trees. No good cover for surveillance, but the house had plenty of windows. I worked my way around the perimeter, staying low and using my military training to remain unseen. Through a side window, I spotted Will in what looked like Trevor's home office. He was sitting in a chair, looking angry but unharmed. Trevor was pacing back and forth, gesturing wildly and clearly agitated. I couldn't hear what was being said, but Will's body language suggested he wasn't intimidated. Good. That was my boy. Erin was there too, standing near the door looking uncomfortable. This whole thing was spiraling beyond what she'd expected. I circled back to my truck and called the police a 3rd time. I've located my son. He's being held at 47 Elm Street against his will. I can see him through the window. Sir, we have units en route. Please don't approach the house until we arrive. Understood. But I didn't drive away. I parked where I could watch the house and waited. If Trevor tried to move Will, I'd be ready. 20 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled into the circular driveway. I drove up behind them as officers approached the front door. Chief Morrison, Pete's cousin, was leading the response. He'd known Will since he was born and took a dim view of adults who involved children in their disputes. Mr. Hartley, I heard him say when Trevor answered the door, we need to speak with you about Will Larkin. This is a family matter, Chief. The boy's fine. The boy's father has custody today, and he filed a missing person report. We need to see Will now. I stayed by my truck, letting the police handle the situation professionally. Through the open door, I could see Trevor's face cycling through anger, confusion, and growing panic as he realized how serious this had become. Will appeared in the doorway, clearly relieved to see the police. He walked straight to me without looking back at Trevor or Erin. Dad, I'm okay. He picked me up at school and said Mom wanted to see me. But when we got here, he started yelling about how you were ruining their lives and I needed to convince you to stop. Are you hurt? No, just angry. And Dad? I told him exactly what I thought about people who lie to kids and drag them into adult problems. Chief Morrison approached us after taking statements from Trevor and Erin. Jack, your son wasn't physically harmed, but taking him from school without permission and holding him while making threats is serious business. We're going to need detailed statements from both of you. Of course, Chief. And Jack? This situation has gone far enough. Whatever's been happening between you folks needs to stop before someone gets hurt. I agree completely, Chief. I just want to live my life and raise my son in peace. That evening, after Will and I had given our statements at the police station, we sat in our kitchen eating takeout Chinese food and processing what had happened. Dad, I'm sorry I went with him. I thought it was legitimate. You couldn't have known, Will. Adults are supposed to be trustworthy, especially family members. Are they going to be arrested? I don't know. That's up to the district attorney. Good. What they did was wrong. The next morning brought news that Trevor had been charged with custodial interference and making terroristic threats. Erin was charged as an accessory. Both were released on bail, but the damage to their reputations was complete. Mrs. Havers appeared at my fence with coffee and the latest gossip. Jack, the whole town's talking about what happened yesterday. People are shocked that they would involve Will in their disputes. It's been a difficult situation, Mrs. Havers. Well, I hope you know that you have a lot of support in this community. What they did was inexcusable. That afternoon, I got a call from Erin's lawyer requesting a meeting. We met at his office downtown, a neutral location where emotions could be kept in check. "Jack, my client wants to resolve this situation," the lawyer said. "She's prepared to agree to a custody modification giving you primary custody of Will." "In exchange for what?" "You drop any civil claims related to yesterday's incident, and you stop whatever campaign you've been running against her and Mr. Hartley." I looked at Erin, who couldn't meet my eyes. She looked tired, older somehow, like the weight of her choices was finally catching up with her. "Erin, do you want to say something to me directly?" She looked up, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married 20 years ago. "I'm sorry, Jack. This got out of hand. I never wanted Will to get hurt." "But you were okay with hurting me?" I thought you'd just give up and move away. Trevor said it would be easy. And now I realize I don't know you as well as I thought I did." I considered the offer. Primary custody of Will, an end to their harassment, and Erin's acknowledgement that she'd been wrong. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. "I'll agree to those terms on one condition. Will gets to decide how much contact he wants with you going forward. No pressure, no guilt trips, no manipulation." Agreed. We signed the papers that afternoon. By evening, Will and I were home, eating dinner in our kitchen with the October sun setting through our repaired front window. "So it's over?" Will asked. "It's over." "Good. I like our life the way it is." "Me too, son. Me too." That night, I sat in my workshop thinking about everything that had happened. Erin and Trevor had tried to use intimidation, harassment, and manipulation to get what they wanted. They'd underestimated the power of patience, planning, and community support. Most importantly, they'd forgotten that actions have consequences, and that sometimes the person you're trying to hurt is better at the game than you are. I looked around our basement workshop, at the house Will and I had defended, at the life we'd built together. Tomorrow, we'd start fresh, without the shadow of their threats hanging over us. But tonight, I was content knowing that sometimes the good guys actually do win.